everyone, Jane here. I'm back with another colour study. If you are new to my channel, I have been treating this year as my year of colour. I really wanted to explore colours of all different mediums, explore creating mixes, explore using different colours and in particular different mediums. And I've really embraced watercolour quite a lot this year, which has been really good fun. And throughout the year I've been doing these colour study videos, which I will link at the end of the video when you get the little cards come up at the end. I'll link the playlist for all the colour studies, but I'll also link it in the description box below along with a list of all the products I've used today. So I've gone through quite a lot of really fun colours. So today, this is a fun colour for me. I like this, but I know that one of the things people often try and avoid making when they are using colours in their work is to make mud or brown. And if you're not trying to make brown and you're trying to keep your colours nice and bright, it can be a bit of a pain. But if you are wanting to make brown, then you can create some beautiful different tones and shades and versions of brown. And I've just got out my colour wheel to just sort of explain a little bit. I'm sorry if I'm sucking anybody to, I'm teaching anybody to suck eggs here, but brown is created from mixing all three primary colours together. Now, when you mix three primary colours together, sometimes you get brown, sometimes you get grey, but you get like these neutral tones. So if I take if you take the three primary colours, red, yellow and blue, and you mix any two together, you get what you call your secondary colours. So yellow and blue, you get green, red and yellow, you get orange. But if you mix all three together, that's when you get the neutral colours. So you can also get it by adding a secondary colour with the other primary colour. So for example, if I mix red and green, I get a browny tone. If I mix orange and blue, I get this sort of greyish tone. And if I mix purple and yellow, let me see, we get a browny tone. So, you know, a little bit of colour theory is helpful if you want to try to avoid mixing up those colours. Obviously, if you've got permanent mediums that you allow each layer to dry, you don't have to worry about that, but it's more if you're using really water reactive products and you're putting one colour next to another, when they come together you might get unexpected consequences. But I love brown, so I looked up a little bit of information about brown and it said that there's not really categories for brown, but you do get sort of yellowish browns, reddish browns and greyish browns, and they're categorised either like that or in light and dark. So I just gathered a spectrum of different sorts of browns from my supplies. Now, sometimes when people do a colour study, they keep it all to one particular medium. I'm a mixed media person. I love using all the mediums, so I like to compare not just the colours of the browns, but also the different ways they act with within different mediums. So with my colour study videos, what I do is I do a swatching part of my video in real time. So I take these different mediums and we have a little look, compare the sort of colours, compare how they work and react. And then I do a project that there's nothing on that page. I always just keep this just to keep this page clean so I can put the things on top. And I do a project, usually an abstract kind of vibe to it, using the mediums but in a time-lapse format with a voiceover over the top to explain what I'm using and what I'm doing. So I have drawn out, now this is meant to be, I don't know if you can guess, it's brown. It's sort of meant to be a chocolate bar. It's not overly, but it's sort of, I wanted that vibe. And I have got a little acorn in the top because we are still clinging, just clinging on to autumn. The trees aren't quite bare, they've still got some leaves and there's loads of acorns about, particularly in the UK. And we've got our colour name at the top. I was thinking I might do some tumbling leaves down the side, but I'll probably do that afterwards. And I have already gridded out my square, so I've got 15, so I've got 15 different mediums. So I will actually, at this point, I will pop on the screen what time the actual project starts. So if you want to skip through the swatching, you're not interested in that, you just want to get to the project, then you can zap forward to that. But I'll add that in the description box as well. So I have already written down all the mediums I'm going to be using just to save a little bit of time. And as usual, I've gone for a mixture. I've gone for a mixture of paints and wet mediums and dry mediums just to get a bit of variation. Now the first one is DS, which is Daniel Smith, and it's this Sepia watercolour. Now I'm going to move some of these things out of the way just so that I've got a bit more space, but also so that as I use them I can put them aside, and then then I will know which ones I've done and which ones I haven't. So this is Daniel Smith watercolour. I have the tube. I do have it in my palette, but it's just easier just to bring this little tube out. I'm not going to put too much out. I will be using it in my project as well, so you know, put a reasonable amount out. And I have just got this brush here which I was using to do my acorn. Now the sepia in the Daniel Smith is a really dark colour. Let's start with the darkest actually. Let's start really dark at the top, see how dark we can get. I'm not worried about filling in these swatches, you know, absolutely perfectly. Let's get a bit more water that down a little bit to see. So that is a really dark brown. I'm not very good on knowing whether sometimes, particularly with browns, whether they are a warm or a cool, and yeah, I can tell when they're reddish ones and I can tell when they're yellowy ones. I would say that was more sort of it's just a dark brown to me. So that's the sepia, but it will dry slightly different, so we'll see that as it goes. Next I have written out Arrtx acrylic markers. Now the thing about these Arrtx ones I've got, I purchased the 30 set a while ago. It's enough colours for me, but they don't have colour names. This has a number, it's C14. These ones are the ones that don't need pumping. I specifically wanted these ones. Now this one definitely is more of a yellowy brown. Now I did get a bit of colour and I had to sort of put some white paint pen over, so I'm hoping that won't affect it. So you might actually say, oh, is that a brown, Jane? Is it? Or is it more of a, I would say it was a brown. I think it's definitely not a yellow, it's dulled down, but so it's much more on like the ochre-y side of a brown, so I would say that was definitely brown. I'm just going to put my brush over there. The next one is the Tempera stick, and again, these do not have colour names. It's just it's one from the classic set. It's, I would say, like, again, it's an orangey or a reddish brown, and that was a yellowy brown, wasn't it? So this is a reddish brown. These are my ones I have are from Shuttleart. They are a children's paint product, so they are not for, you know, they don't have any light fast ratings or anything like that, but they are really good fun if you just want to sort of make in your work. That, you know, they're not a fine art tool by any stretch, and you can get a little bit of movement, and I have found you can get, especially if you're quite quick, you can move them with a bit of water, but they dry quite quickly, which is why they're ideal for children. And they're just great fun. So you can see already we've got 3 totally different types of brown here, which is why I love brown. I find it a fun colour. Right, a popular medium at the moment are the Derwent drawing pencils. I have a selection. I have a video on my channel about how I chose what colours I chose from the new range that come out. This one is chocolate, which is an old colour, as in it was from the original set. The Derwent drawing pencils are really nice. I really like them, and I picked this one up because, again, it's a really dark brown, and obviously when I'm making my project I need to have different values of colour. I need to have lights and I need to have darks and I need to have different shades, because I need some things to stand out and I need to have a bit of contrast. So this is what I'm just going over a few times just to see how dark we can get this. And these really feel nice. There we go. So that's the chocolate. The chocolate is actually, I would say, it's bordering on black. It is a brown, but it's such a dark and see, like the sepia was dark, but that is even darker, so that will be fabulous for mark making on my project. Couldn't not have a distress ink. Distress inks have some of the most interesting browns in terms of, everybody seems to love vintage photo. It is one of my favorites, and it's a really good colour for adding some age to things. I also do really like Rusty Hinge, and I do like Tea Dye as well, which is like a bit of a paler colour. But I thought we'd go with Vintage Photo. I will actually, I'm just going to grab a little, oh no, not that one. Grab a little blending brush, and we'll just blend some of this out. Now this little tiny distress ink I've got here, I've had a long time, so hopefully it's still okay. Oh, yeah, look. So you can see how around like projects that give a really nice aged look. I wonder if, so because you can also stamp with your distress inks. It's one of those things people don't tend to do as much. They are also very water reactive, so you can like put a little bit on a ceramic plate or on a blending mat, something like that, and then lift with a paintbrush and use them as a watercolour. But you can also, I'm sorry if you can, I hope you can still hear me. There we go, I'm going to need this one anyway. Let's grab a stamp, let's grab this one. Same one I always use because it's easiest. Get a little block because I want it to be a little bit organised. So this is I would you say it was like an orangey brown? I don't know. Like I say, I am not an expert. This is meant to be more for fun, more to just experiment. And I would encourage everybody to just experiment with them, with your mediums, to find out what they do. So there's a little bit, so you get a darker tone if you're stamping with it. And obviously you could get that much lighter if you watered that out. By the way, the drawing pencils, they are not water reactive. They're just I think they're oil based. Don't quote me on that one. I feel they're oil based. The Tempera sticks, you can water a little bit, but they do dry quite quickly. I don't find you can really move them much. Let me just try. I do like to have a little go. Let's just see if we can lift that. Oh, you can. There you go. You can lift that. But mostly that is going to, you're not going to move a lot of the pigment, if you know what I mean. You would have to probably really work at trying to blend that, but they are still water reactive in that sort of way. And you can certainly see now how orange that is. The Arrtx are permanent, and obviously your watercolour, you are going to be able to move. There we go. Oh dear, I've just dripped a bit on there. Dripped. Let's get rid of that. But again, with the there you go, with the distress inks, you can certainly water them out. I should have said as well, this is the Etchr B5 Portrait Sketchbook. It's one of my favourites, and I've been doing all of my colour studies in this. I apologise if you can hear my squeaky chair. I really do need to get it looked at, get someone to look at it, or look at it myself. I'm not sure why it's so squeaky. Right, next I've got Archival ink, so another ink. Now, I've chosen Ground Espresso because it's a much darker colour. And with Archival ink, these are permanent once they're dry. Excellent for stamping over all sorts of things. You can get a blending tool and blend them around things a little bit, but because they dry so quick, it's not usually, you don't get much before you have to sort of ink your sponge or whatever you're using. Now mine is a very well used little mini Archival ink pad, so I'm pretty sure that if you have a new one, it's going to be darker than that, but that's what I've got. So I'll give it a little wipe. I don't tend to wipe Archival ink off my stamps because I just leave it and it builds up and it works really nice. Faber Castell Pitt pen in dark sepia. Now these are made with India ink, and they are waterproof, and so they don't move once they're dry. You get a tiny bit of room to blend, but not really a lot. So if you do want to ever do any sort of blending or blend them out a little bit, you have to be very, very quick. So dark sepia. Now I don't know why this one is called dark sepia. That's just called sepia. They look similar to me. Again, you can with these, again, layer them up to get different tones. And I do love these ones because you can get some lovely fine lines as well. They're I really like these pens. You don't see them used that much, but I really do enjoy them. The next one is the Ecoline brush pen. Now I've chosen Sepia Light because I thought that would be interesting, because from the cap it looks very different to the sepia and the dark sepia. But this is what I mean, like the different tones that you can get are really interesting in your brown. So now this is a water reactive pen. I never know quite what to call them, because I often want to say water soluble, but technically, I think scientifically, they're probably not water soluble, because that would mean that they're dissolving in the water. But they're water reactive is what I said. They react to water. So this one, you can use these pens just, you know, as a pen if you want. But the idea is that if you put some colour down, you can then water them out. Now I do find that depending on the paper you're using, if you're using a good sort of paper that is very blendable on, you can use them this way and really blend the colour out. I find sometimes you do get lines with this, so what I tend to do with these pens, if I want to use them with water, is I will take a bit and I'll either put it on like a ceramic palette or a blending mat or a block, and I will put it on there, and then I will take the colour and use it as a watercolour rather than scribbling it down and watering it out. I find that works better for me. Oop, let's wipe that off. I'll pop that back on there. The next one, acrylic paint. Ooh, acrylic paint. So we've had an acrylic marker. This is actual acrylic paint. I chose this one because I thought if I do any stenciling, I'm going to want some paint. And this one is by Indigo Blue. It says Junk and Disorderly, because that was a range they originally brought out that was meant to be more steampunky, but I don't know if they still actually do as that, but I think they do still do the colour. I won't link any companies under my video, because everybody that watches are in different countries, and also companies in this day and age have different rules about where they'll send. I don't want to upset anybody by saying a company and then they don't send to their country, and also companies close nowadays. So I just like to list things I use and then allow you to search them up if you want to. So this is Warm Tan. It's a matte acrylic paint, which means it will dry nice and flat with not a shine on it. And I think this one I would have put this one in a greyish brown. I don't know about anybody else. This one, now I'm seeing that as a light. That's got, I feel like a yellowy tone to it, and that more of a greyish tone. But you know, like I say, I don't worry about things like that. I just go by the colours I like. So Dina Wakley Scribble Stick. Do like this. You can see how I tend to use my scribble sticks is that's the end that was the pointy end, which obviously I have ground down. But if I want to take colour from the stick, I take it from the other end, which is why mine is now sort of dented around the edge, because I go like that and draw the colour. This is one of my most used scribble sticks. I don't use them that often, but I do like them sometimes to be used. Now this one I do believe is Umber. Some of these products, yeah, it says it there, the writing for the colours is just so like blended, and it's really hard, even with glasses on. Sometimes I have to take a photo and enlarge. It's very odd. Right, so these can be used again just on their own. You can sharpen it. It's, you know, underneath this bit of paper, it's just pigment. Now I believe she said these are like semi-permanent once dry, but again, once they're watered out. If you left that like that and then came back one day and dripped water on it, it's going to react in some way because the pigment is still sort of there. But if you water it out, then you are making it, I'm pretty sure she said it's semi-permanent, so it pretty much will stay where it is if you just drop water on it. However, you know, if you went in there with a brush and scrubbed at it, it's probably going to move. So that's how that one works, like that. Or, like I said, I tend to get the brush. You can also, these are good for like flicking bits of colour for splatters. and then you can colour with it like a watercolour as well. These sorts of things I always think are really handy if you want to go out painting or something and you don't want to take actual watercolours, you want to take sticks, because you can probably fit more in a tin than you could with a watercolour, you know, like as in a different sort of tin. Right, let's go with Distress watercolour pencils. Oh, I've got 3 sets of these, the first 3 sets that came out, and I have to admit I don't really use them, but you know, when I do, they're fine, but I just don't. But if you love the Distress colour palette and you want pencils that are water reactive that go with your inks, then these are, you know, a nice thing. Again, I would have said that Umber, when you water it out, it's got a bit of that sort of, is it? No, it's not yet. It's more of a grey tone, isn't it? I would have said it's probably a grey. I'm not sure. But this is definitely Rusty Hinge. One of my favourites is a definite orange tone, and again, exactly like the Scribble stick. But these are not permanent when they dry. You can use them just as a normal pencil if you want to, but again, if you spill water on that or put your fingers on it, you're probably going to move it. Or you can get your water and you can water it out. I find these water out quite nice, actually. Better than some products. Some products, you know, you tend to get that line left behind, but these I find they do actually water out really nicely. And again, you can do the same as you can with all your sort of water reactive pigment sticks. Get your brush and lift it from the tip. With these ones, so again, this is woodless, so this is just like a plasticky, papery wrapper, which is there to protect your hands, to stop your hands getting dirty. But I mean, if you wanted to, you could take that off, or just tear it as you sharpen. Now, I've sharpened these with a normal pencil sharpener, and they get a tip again. So they're quite a nice one. To be honest, if I'm not using products, it's not usually because I don't like them. It's just because I don't think to use them. So my next one is Unison Soft Pastels. I have discovered pastels. Well, I haven't discovered pastels, obviously, because they were discovered long before me. But I personally have this year decided to buy some pastels. I bought these whilst I was on holiday. You'll see them in my holiday haul. And this was a drawing set. I was really bewildered as to what I wanted to buy. So I decided to just go with like a neutrals type set. And this one I do believe is called Brown Earth. I'm not sure because these colours don't all match. See, that says grey 27 and that's not grey. And that says grey and that says grey. So I don't know. But this is Brown Earth. So I will just put a little bit out. Do some lines. I do believe. Let's have a little look. I think pastels are generally also water reactive. So let's have a little look. See, you do get a little bit of mess. I quite like these ones. They're only half sticks. Now let's just see. Yes, you do. So you can water out your pastels, and I'm going to presume if you water them out, maybe you don't need to seal them. I don't know. If you do know, let me know in the comments. But yeah, so again, like a paint, but that's a really, I love that. That's a really nice brown. It's got a warmer tone to it, I think, than maybe some of the other darker browns I've got there. I'm going to put that over there because I don't want that to get wet. Excuse me, I'm going to cough. What's the next one? Boku Undo Brownish Black. Now, I was trying to find some different mediums this time because I know that people have been watching these for a while. You will have seen the same sorts of mediums coming up. Now these are, I think these weren't. I've not seen it on, but I'm pretty sure they're like Sumi ink based. They're Japanese colours, so I think they've got like an inky colouring to them. They're not like a watercolour, if that makes any sense whatsoever. And they're all based on like a black. So we've got reddish black, yellowish black, greenish black, bluish black, purplish black and brownish black. I have used them a little bit. I've used them in a couple of videos. So if you go back through my channel there, you might find them there. But I thought, let's have a little look. These are really, really intense. Let's get a bit more of that going on there. Let's get that really. But these are fun for like if you do moody things or you want a real inky look, but you can also really water them out and get some lovely colours, because obviously when they're in the darkest form they're going to all look more black, but if you really water them out you see more of that undertone of that colour sort of in there. So that one is brownish black. So that's, oh, do you know what, I don't even know if it's still as dark as the chocolate pencil. Maybe just a tad. Actually, yeah, it is. It is much nearer to a black than a brown, I think. Pan Pastel. So I thought I'd go with one of the classic colours. Oh, to be fair, it's the only brown I've got in Pan Pastel. It's burnt sienna, which is, you know, one of your classic colours for browns. Now I'm trying to find a bit of this sponge that's not dirty. Now these I do like the Pan Pastels. Again, one of my underused, underloved mediums, but they have, you can do some fab techniques as well with these. If you've got like embossing pads and, you know, watermark typing pads, you can do great lifting techniques and or stamping with them, and then putting the stamping with your like your Versamark or whatever, and then dusting with the Pan Pastels. You can get some really fab effects. I just don't get around to doing that. And again, a nice orangey brown, or a reddish brown I should say. And finally, I got my Ohuhu alcohol marker because I thought I want to find one that actually says brown grey, and this is called Brown Grey E280. Now these are the older Ohuhu markers. I got these a while ago, and they're the Oahu I want to say, which are the ones that have the fine bullet and the chisel. I personally don't like a brush nib particularly in an alcohol marker. I prefer a chisel, but I know a lot of people don't. So this is not the sort of paper you would probably usually be using your alcohol markers on, but just for the sake of swatching, I probably won't use this in the main project. But yes, so you can see that a lot of these are sort of more in that grey tone rather than the yellow as I was thinking. I think the only one that's really a yellowish brown is that one. We've got a few orangey ones. So a lot of them got that grey sort of base to them. But here is my swatch. And what I will do is I will take a photo of this, and at the end of the video I will put a still of that page on the photo section so that you can have a look at exactly at the different products, and hopefully you can read my writing, we hope. But you can always then take a screenshot and zoom in if you need to. So what I will do in a moment is I will be back with a time lapse, and we will use this page. I think I'm going to mask up because I did the grid. I want to do a similar grid. Now I can either draw out another grid, or I can mask a grid. I think I'm going to mask a grid because I like it when and I might try and mask it a bit the same to create a similar vibe over on this side. And we'll use, I say we, that's the royal we. I'll use the products to create a sort of abstracty brown page project over here. So if you have enjoyed so far, do please give this video a thumbs up. And there is a hype button now that you can press. When I try and go on people's videos and try and hype, sometimes I don't get the hype button, so I'm not quite sure why I get it sometimes and not. But if you do see a hype button on my videos, do please, if you are able to, pop a hype on there, because what it does is it gives the videos points, and then the more points you've got, I think the more YouTube shares your video. I'm not quite sure, but it doesn't cost anything to hype. I think you get 3 a week or something like that. So that would be really helpful. And if you haven't already subscribed and you think this is the sort of content along with everything else that I produce, I'm quite eclectic, I have to say, on my channel. I don't stick to one particular thing because that's just the way I am creatively. But, you know, you don't have to watch every single video that I make. You can just stick to either, you know, the watercolory ones or the hauly ones or the collagey ones, you know, whichever ones suit you. But it'd be lovely if you'd subscribe as well. So I will see you after a very short, probably a millisecond of a break to go into the main project. I started out by adding some painter's tape around the edge. I went for quite a thick border because I wanted it to match in with the other side, and then added some thin strips along the sort to make the gridded areas. I'm starting out with the sort of drier but sort of bigger coverage products. So I'm going with the pan pastel and the distress ink to start with, and just adding them really randomly. This whole sort of project is going to be fairly abstract, fairly random, although when I say random I still have a tendency to try and go into every single square. And once I'd put those two products down, I just wanted to add in some of the watery products next. So I've got the Daniel Smith watercolour that was left over on the little palette here. Well, I say palette, it's actually a soap dish, but it's ceramic and it's cute. And then I'm going in with the Boku Undo sort of Sumi ink paints. I'm not quite sure whether they're a paint or an ink, but adding in some lines. And I got quite keen on doing these lines. They were quite good fun, and I just went sort of really sort of abstract with those. Now I'm grabbing another couple of stamps from the stamp set I used earlier, and I'm just going in with the ground espresso archival. Now, as I said before, this ink pad is not the juiciest. I think I need to try and find a re-inker for this, and so it's fairly light, but you can see the stamped images on there. So I was trying to fill in a number of the squares, but I didn't want them all to be exactly the same, so I'm sort of leaving some blank. Then I decided to use a few different mediums to colour in the stamped images. So I'm going with the Ecolines, then the pencil from the Distress Ink pencil, not Distress Ink pencil, the Distress pencil, and then, oh no, I don't colour in with the Scribble stick, I do something else with that. But because the stamped images are with archival, the lines don't move. However, the products that are underneath are still water reactive, some of them. So in a few of the areas, some of the browns did sort of mix up to create different browns, but because it's all the one colour, it doesn't matter, because you know it's just going to make a different shade, a different tone of brown. And here I am with the Scribble stick. I'm just trying to add some splatters, so I just really wet the brush and you just sort of splatter it off the end of the Scribble stick. It's a really nice way of doing splatters. Now this stencil is from the Crafters Workshop. It's a really old one. Now I will find the proper name to put in the description, but I think it's something like Mini Well Rounded or something along those lines. I'm not even sure if it's still available. It's really old. It's one of my favourite stencils to use, and I'm using it with the Indigo Blue acrylic paint. The paint is a fairly light brown, so it's not, you know, standing out in your face, but it is there. And the fact that actually it's lighter is quite nice because it's bringing in that contrast sort of onto the page. So I'm using all the different elements, well not all of them, but most of the different elements from the stencil, and I'm trying to again sort of, although I was trying to be random, I end up not being exactly random, and I'm making sure that there's different shapes all around the page. Now when that was all dry, I just wanted to add in some final mark making. So I'm going in with a couple of the darker products because again, I'm wanting to create that contrast in the values. So I'm going in with the Derwent pencil, and then I go in with the Faber Castell Pitt pen. And finally, I add in a little bit of the different colour with the acrylic marker. You may have noticed I haven't used every single one of the mediums. Some of them I didn't feel fit with the page, and also because there was 15 of them and I had gridded this up into quite small squares, I did feel that if I added too much more it would become overwhelmed with the different sort of colours and shapes on there. So thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this colour study. I will hopefully be doing, I've got a couple more colours that I still want to do, and if that goes into next year, well then that's fine, I will still carry on doing that. And at the end of this video, you'll see a list of my lovely YouTube members who are my super supporters. So a big thank you and shout out to those. And I will add some information into the description box if that's something you are interested in finding out more about. So until the next time, thank you very much for watching, and bye bye.